there mainly exist three ways to define a variable. And the first one is using the var keyword. So we can, for example, say var followed by the variable name, which could be name, for example. And now we could either end the variable declaration by using a semicolon, or we can directly assign a value to our variable. And we can do so by using the equal sign followed by the value we want to assign to our variable name. So we could, for example, say our name is Pascal, for example. And now we end that statement by using a semicolon. The second way would be to use the let keyword. And now we can, for example, again say let first name, for example, be equal to Jonas in our case. And this would be another option to declare a variable. And the third way would be to use the const keyword. And now we could, for example, say last name equals whatever. So now we have three different ways to declare a variable. But what is the difference between those ways? Using the var keyword was basically the old way, and variables defined by using the var keyword usually have a function scope. We'll get to that later on, and this is something you definitely want to avoid. So from my experience, never ever use var. So let and const are basically the modern ways to define variables. And the difference between let and const is that let is basically reassignable. So I could, for example, go here and say first name now equals Pascal as well, for example. And this would work. But if I would do the same with our last name, which has a const variable, it should not work and we should get an error. If I say, for example, let's say, hey, and this is our last name now, and now I want to console.log our last name, for example, and I'm going to run the file, you can see that we are now basically getting an error inside of the console. If I go ahead and delete the last name and just log our first name though, and I run the code once again, as you can see, we now get the output inside of the console and everything works just fine. It's also a convention that you use capital letters when you're declaring a constant variable. And a good example for a constant variable would be pi, for example, which is equal to 3.14 whatever. And for variables defined using the let keyword, you usually use camel case, which basically means the first word of a variable uses only lowercase letters, while every other word uses a capital letter as the first letter. And an example would, for example, be camel case. And as you can see, first word only lowercase letters, and the second word starts with a capital letter. And if I would have another word like another word, this is how you would do it. And this is just a convention, so it's good if you just keep that in mind.